them right here.
Yes.
So students they're in tune. They're in tune with what's going on. They're looking for answers. They are trying to figure out, right, what their role is and what it is that they could possibly do. And my response to them is always, look at what happened before and look at how, activists and our leaders, how they approached situations, right? And take those lessons and you never have to try to recreate the wheel, right? But you can build upon a foundation that has already been established and be informed. Like that for me is one of the biggest things. I never want my students or anybody really to go out and start talking and you don't know what you're talking about.
That's very true.
Study, do some research, and find out like what the salient issues are, understand what a provocateur is and how all of that plays into these events that we call riots, and then the media looks at them and saying, oh yeah, it's Black people burning down their own home. No. Like I could give you several instances where you had provocateurs going into Black neighborhoods and inciting what the media called riots. And it's not Black people doing that to themselves. So, and just looking at, I've started reading myself some books that I had purchased last year. And now I'm just like, I gotta get into it. I have to read them. And so, for example, I'm reading Stamped from the Beginning, which talks about, racism and how all of this came to be and really like what it means for us as a society and looking at racism and thinking about like, how can we become anti-racist? Is that even possible?
Right.
In this present political, social, and economic climate? Is that a possibility? And honestly, I would say over the last 2 years, I had students who felt like they had never experienced racism. And that was very interesting to me. And they said, because, I went to a school that was very diverse and I had, friends of all different ethnicities and I've never experienced racism. And I'm like, you just didn't realize you had.
Or little microaggressions that.
Yes, and like, most of it is them not knowing necessarily the terminology and what a microaggression is, right? To even recognize that is racism. But I think that now, with all of these things happening, and it just seems like within weeks of each other, they're really starting to look and they're like, oh yeah, I do remember when X, Y, and Z happened. And so how should I handle that? And I think that the more in tune that we become about what's happening around us, right, the better we will be able to sort of deal with these things, and then also be able to have real conversations with our students about the issues that are at hand.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and do you see that this movement would, as it moves forward, that students are opening their eyes to these conversations, or do they feel empowered, or should they feel empowered to really have these conversations now more than ever? with not just each other, but with people that are listening. Because it's the world's at attention right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would say, because we haven't been together since March, I cannot really like say full scale that students feel empowered, right? I do believe that some students, and I'm basing that on the students that I've talked to, some students do feel a sense of empowerment, but sometimes they're not really sure, what do I do with that?
right.
How do I go out and how do I make a change? How do I go out and protest and not end up being one of these statistics? Right. And so it's very scary for a lot of people, right? And it's not just the students who are afraid, their parents are also afraid for their children,
Right.
and not wanting necessarily their children to be out there and, probably become the next statistic. But I think that our students are in a unique situation because they are students of Texas Southern University, who Texas Southern has a rich history in activism and our faculty. So Professor Thomas Melanson, who was a student at TSU during '67, he wrote folk songs about what was happening, and those protest songs are still relevant today.
Oh yes.
Right. So
I just heard 400 years
yes,
yesterday. So yes.
And those are things that students need to, they need to know. That's what we should be teaching in our classes, right? That's what we should have as a banner across the Texas Southern, webpage, so that students understand that you are uniquely situated. You have people who are around you that are uniquely qualified to help you and to sort of guide you, in the direction that makes the most sense and that would keep you out of harm's way.
Oh yeah. I think that's why I really wanted to reach out and do this during the summer, since we've been so apart for so long. I mean, our students come to TSU for a reason, and you always have your HBCU in your corner and you always need them, but out of all the times, right now is when you really want to reach out and just be connected with your HBCU. So
Definitely.
yeah. And in regards to these students that are trying to find their path in their role in the movement, and there's several lanes of activism. How do you, especially with your knowledge of history, how do you see students trying to find their voice, especially, let's say, like, with what can we do on campus? What is our role in guiding our students right now? Do you feel like, what can we do?
So I think that, okay, so let me sort of pick this apart. The way that I approach helping students find their voice is getting to like really know my students and understanding like what they are interested in. So I have some students who are musicians, and my thing is, if you're a musician, like I got some stuff that you can listen to that will help you understand how you can use your craft to be a part of the social justice movement. And some of my lectures, especially in AFAM, when we get closer and we get into the civil rights movement, I'll start the class and play music. And one of my favorite artists is Gil Scott-Heron. And I'll play The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. And I'm like, look, don't talk. I just need you to listen. I need you to listen, and I need you to have these words that Gil Scott-Heron is saying. I need them to seep into your membrane, right? If you're an artist, use your craft, right? You can look at what Biggers was doing and the whole movement, that John Biggers started at Texas Southern. Art is a way of speaking to social injustice, right? If you're a writer, we have excellent faculty who can really guide you in using your writing skills to speak to the movement, right? So for me, it's about understanding students and what their interests are. I was talking to a student who is in one of my classes right now, and he's a musician, and he and another one of our students are working together, and they're doing some stuff for George Floyd in the next couple of days, and it's centered around music. So that's how I would really try to guide students, because a lot of times I think that if you're not participating in the movement in a way that speaks to who you are, you'll fizzle out.
Right.
And you're not productive, and then you sort of become desensitized around the issues. And so if you work around things that you're passionate about, that's what continues to give the movement life.
Yes, awesome. I mean, I totally agree, because I mean, long after we're not on the top of the hour on the 24-hour news cycle, the work is still going.
Yeah, it is.
But,
and that's what students need to understand. And because I've had students in the past who say, "Oh, the movement is over." I was like, "When did it stop?"
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't get that memo. I missed it.
Yeah. But see, that leads me to a question that I often hear and see from students. Just now being that older person that I never really listened to when I was in my 20s, how you're so passionate and active, and you want to have these big sweeping changes, but then you don't see it. So then how do you keep yourself motivated? How do you continue being part of the movement when it's not playing all hour long in the news cycle? But like you said, the movement doesn't end.
It doesn't. I can remember, being in high school, and I've always been like a little bit radical, to the point of my parents were like, "Girl, you gotta get yourself together." And I was in the magnet school, and history class was like white history. And so I come from a family of educators, and so February rolls around, and I'm like, "Oh, so we're not gonna talk about Black people?" And my history teacher was mortified. And my mom is like, "Tomiko, there are certain ways that you have to conduct yourself, and you cannot." And I'm like, "Well, so you're right, like things that you're passionate about, that's what's going to continually push you and push you and push you." And for me, I feel like, even though I've not always done